Your plan.
I apologize for being tardy.
You got to meet Caitlin.
Hello.
That's cool.
Did you forget about
Okay,
us?
we are on.
Did you forget about it? Okay, we're on. Great. Thank you. Good evening. It's about 6:05. This is the Town of Harwich Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, December 12th, 2024. And I'll call the meeting to order. Just remind everybody that we are recording this session. If anybody in the audience has an intent to record this meeting, please be recognized and advise the chair. Okay? All right, so let's go to approved minutes of November 14, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November, why do I say March? 14, 2024. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Mark?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Chair is an aye, 5-0. Thank you very much. And by the way, I'll just say that we do have 5 members here present. Dana DaCosta is here, Mark Keller is here, Dan Twerk is here, Bob McCready is here, and the Chair Peter Hughes is here. So we have 5 members present, which constitutes a quorum for us. Okay, now we have a request from Town Administrator Joe Powers for a reserve fund request.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your consideration this evening of the request. As you'll see in the form, which was slightly modified from the original to reflect that this is a request coming from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund rather than the standard reserves that we do at the end of the fiscal year. I think otherwise you'll see that the form is consistent with past practice and other efforts that we've done before. So as you will see on that, the Select Board Administration on behalf or in support of the local planning committee, which, as you know, the LPC has been charged by the town to create the LCP, the Local Comprehensive Plan. So this request for $40,000 is necessitated by the consultant, Ty and Bond, have indicated that they need this final dollar amount to finish up a number of outstanding items. Now, I will tell you that had there been a special town meeting in the fall, there was anticipated that we would be seeking supplemental funds for the original article, which created this back in 2019. However, the absence of that special town meeting and not being able to locate other available funds brings me to this point today. If it helps, and you can see in the form, specifically the things that we need them to finish for the local comprehensive plan are related to the open space and recreation plan. So as you may recall, after the select board had established the local planning committee, they also tasked that committee with incorporating into the LCP the open space and recreation plan that we need to update, the housing production plan that we need to update. And so portions of those were not contemplated at the time of the evaluation. When the vendor came, their actual dollar amount was higher. However, I rejected their request because it exceeded the 20% that's allowed under procurement, and we were able to knock off things that we thought were somewhat superfluous.
Hey, Scott, welcome.
Hi there.
Scott Norm just joined us. Where are you, in Costa Rica or Boston?
We are.
Oh, okay.
It's almost the same thing.
All right. All right, we're listening to a presentation by the town administrator regarding a reserve fund transfer. So keep going, Joe.
Thank you. So, the inclusion of those 2 other sub-plans which influence the overall plan but are specifically needed because both expire, we need those individually for open space and recreation grants through the Commonwealth, and as we work on affordable housing, the housing production plan is something that EOHLC looks as a positive contribution by the town. So really the request, the majority of it is to finalize the LPC by incorporating additional dollars for open space and recreation plan, and then to finalize the document, which we are anticipating will come before the town meeting next spring. I have further documentation from the Director of Planning and Community Development if you need further evaluation or information. But again, this is a request from the Select Board through administration on behalf of the local planning committee. Thank you.
Okay, so I will continue to call this coastal engineering just because it's hard to get that out of my head. tie-in bond purchase or acquired.
Thank you for the reference.
Engineering,
Exactly, yep.
The coastal engineering part may not be the folks that are doing this work, I don't know.
Correct, they are legacy tie-in bond.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So if I say coastal engineering, shoot me, I don't know. Anyhow, so this is an expanded scope of work since the original contract was let, correct?
No, we were contemplating other plans if necessary, so that doesn't expand the scope of services that we use to bring on the vendor. We anticipated these plans to be part of the overall document. That's why we were able to negotiate with the vendor when they say they need more money. Another element of this is, I believe, the LCP, as is their right, expanded on some of their activities. So they spent more money than I think they originally intended on outreach and things of those matters. But it was all still within the original scope of the RFP.
So was it a time and material contract?
For the most part, yes,
Yeah,
yep,
okay, so basically, the work they've had to do to date has gotten them to the point where they need more money, and these are the items they have to work on.
correct.
Assuming this is approved, will that work get completed before you get to town meeting?
Yes, this is what's needed to get to town meeting. But even before it gets to town meeting, I believe it has to go through the select board for them to endorse and create the adopting article.
Right, so this would be the document for the planning group that's going to be taken to town meeting for approval.
Correct.
So
And if
without-
adopted,
without
would be in
this-
place for 10
Without
years.
this, it's not happening.
Correct.
Then the only thing I'll say about it is, our reserve fund is $50,000, and this is 80% of it to request. But here
Correct.
we are, mid-year, basically. And, I think we should do this. You're on the risk of, something else coming up, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I think this has to be moved forward and keep going, so we get this important element done. I'd also put a plug in for increasing the, you heard that the other night, sorry.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I've not only heard that, I've taken note, and as we develop the operating budget, I understand that there was to be an expectation for that number, so.
There's an expectation. All right, thank you. With that, questions or comments? Yep, Mark.
Just a one quick question. I thought we had 50,000 in the account for this fiscal year. We already gave $20,000 to the harbor master for new engines, so is there 50,000 in there still?
According to the munis report that I ran today, yes, the Oregon object that's reflected on your form
The new engine was last year.
does show a $50,000 balance.
No, the harbor master came before us just a few months ago, and we.
No, I think it was
It was
last year.
before the end of the year, though.
Yeah, before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so
And
That's
they're doing the
20,000.
second engine within the budget.
Excuse me, our funds don't, our reserve fund, if we have a balance, it doesn't roll over into that account. It goes towards free cash, basically. So we reset it every year, so we don't keep accumulating, But we did, I'm almost positive that was last year. And if you had the finance director saying we have 50,000
So
available.
in the munis report, if you recall a number of $23,394, that appears to have been done in the 10th month of the fiscal year. So that shows in the last year report. The balance does come back presently as the 50,000.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, Dan? Okay, Bob?
I had the same question, so I'm glad that we had the answer already.
So is your memory that?
My memory, time flies when you're getting old, you know?
Okay,
Watch these guys.
all right,
Write it
Dana?
down. Based on everything we've heard, I'd make a motion to approve the request.
Okay, moved and, who's in a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the request for in $40,000 to be transferred from the Finance Committee reserve account for the stated purpose. Any further discussion? I'll just throw out something, Joe, and that's just as a point of interest for the board. What would be our strategy if someone came up 3 weeks from now and said, I need 20 grand, and it's an emergency?
So what we do in any circumstance is we scour all of the appropriating articles to see if there's a like use that was indicated by that article. We also always look at operating budget to see if it's there. So to that end, at present, administration has a balance of just under $37,000 for other professional and technical services. So rather than deplete that and ask for $3,000, that could be the next effort that we go
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
depending upon the dollar
As
amount.
long as we have another pocket to go to.
Absolutely.
All right, Scott, did you have any questions or comments? Can't hear
You're
you.
muted.
You're muted.
That was be my question, what happens when the next emergency rolls around in the next 7 months?
We take up a collection amongst,
The books for other.
we take up a collection amongst the finance committee members and the town administrator and the board of selectmen and see how we do.
See if we can sell bricks in the new sidewalk.
There is an option, I wanted Joe to point that out, there are other means by which we can satisfy an emergency, that's all. Because once in a while, you will get a boiler that decides it doesn't want to work or
God
something,
forbid.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so
So
moving,
this is
go ahead.
very similar to what we did at the end of the year in last summer, right?
You mean for the engine,
Yeah,
for the engine?
A dozen transfers.
Yeah, it's unforeseen expense for which there is no budget. Nothing's been appropriated, like with the harbor master. And he had an engine on a boat that the boat wasn't gonna run unless he had an engine, basically. I mean, so, and this work won't get done unless we fund it. So here we are. Okay?
Got it.
buying
Alright.
another engine, as it were.
There you go. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Mark?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Aye.
None? Scott, you want to vote remotely? It doesn't count on the sheet, but you can say aye.
Aye.
Okay, chair is an aye, so present 5-0. So now I have to fill out a little bit of paperwork, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee. Appreciate the support.
It's just all part of the commercial to get that increase in the reserve fund.
I can say it on the record yet
don't
again. I'm
say
aware of
that.
it, and I put it in there. It's in the administrator's draft budget. How's that?
All right, there you go.
Because that's an extraordinary hurdle.
Well, it is where we want it in the budget, not in getting into articles, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's part of our reserve, and
That's what a
when we don't
reserve
use
is
it, it
for.
goes back.
Well, it's there for the intended purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, I have 2 copies, so if you need more, I can stop by and sign one or something.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Just text me or email me or something.
Will do.
Let
Thank
me
you,
know.
folks.
All right, thank you.
And if for some reason we don't connect, happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
We're gonna see you Monday.
See you Monday. I'll hold it in reserve.
We're gonna be their Christmas present.
Thanks again.
All right.
Grab one and pass it down if you want.
Okay, thank you. All right, in 9 minutes, the chair is leaving and the vice chair will take over. And I will be giving him the key. Is he listening? I'll be giving him the key in case he has to lock up. Okay, let's go on to old business. Revolving fund document. Dane, is this the same one you?
Yeah, I just put the charts on it, but yeah, it's more or less the same.
Same wording?
Yeah.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, I sent this on to our liaison, selectman liaison, and I asked specifically for the munis reports on the revolving funds for 2024.
Finish them off.
I have heard nothing back, but my intention is to probe him on that and the other topic that we have, Bob, tomorrow. Okay, so pending that,
And there's another set of documents in back that we'll go over later. First 6 pages of it.
okay, so the end of it's
Yeah, you got 2 clips here if you want to separate them.
okay, so you need to talk about the second one? So you're.
Later. Yeah.
Later?
Yeah.
I mean, at a different time?
Within the, yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay,
Tonight,
all
yeah.
right, I'm just trying to be clear. Okay, so let me, for a second, put this on hold for a second, all right? Michelle, I just want to make sure we identify these things. Michelle is not here, so she's not going to give us any update on the website. The annual town meeting FinCom tracking documents. In our last meeting, you weren't here, but there was some discussion. Bob and Michelle were a little bit concerned, I guess, about who was actually going to do that work, tracking everything for the year. Michelle the other night told me that she had talked with you.
Yep, we, Bob and I
three
and
of us.
Michelle had
Okay.
a meeting.
And so my understanding is that you're going to produce the numbers, at least for this year,
Yeah,
and keep them up to date, so everybody has
Yeah.
the same version.
yeah, and that's
Right.
what we'll go over tonight a little bit. later.
Okay.
And I was gonna do it under that part of the,
Okay, so I just want to make sure that's the case,
yeah.
right? And then the other one is, Mark Keller was gonna, he's been sending around, I don't just send it to everybody, just me, some information on reserves. versus operating funds. And basically what he's been doing is checking in with basically all the towns on the Cape to find out what their basic policy or levels are as far as how much they have reserves, what the stabilization account may be. And this was prompted by when you guys went to the Mass Association Finance thing. Apparently there was some recommendations regarding the ratio of operating funds to the budget. And if I remember correctly, the suggestion was that you have in reserve, some sort of reserve, enough funds so that you can go 2 months without any issue. Is
That
that
would be
summarize
correct.
it? Yeah.
At least one town had 2 months of in reserve of operating funds. And the Division of Local Services recommends that between the free cash and a stabilization fund, they have between 10 and 15%. And Scott very handily had gone on the website and found, and we're only up to 2023, but Harwich was, it's increased its percentage from 5.25 to 7.8, but both years are below the average of all other Cape towns. So I think once we have the meeting on the fiscal results from '24, we can kind of extrapolate what all the other towns have and see how we are comparatively.
Yeah, so you and Scott are working on this together?
Yeah,
Okay, so
Scott's the
so-
techno guy, and I did some of the legwork.
Okay, so can we give you an action item basically to come to our meeting next month and give us a report?
Certainly can.
Unless you don't have the data.
No, I think once we get the '24 data, I can update the reports that we already have, and we'll have some pretty good data to compare ourselves to other towns, see where we're
Okay,
at.
and my intent in this is, number one, to let us all understand where we are relative to other towns, and most importantly, I'm assuming we're underfunded. I'm just guessing that. Maybe we're not, but I'm assuming we are. But if we are, it's ammunition to say, okay, whatever the free cash level is, it needs to be X amount that's designated for the stabilization fund, basically. Okay, and that would be a firm foundation. Maybe you don't catch up in 1 year, but
Right, just so you can see how we compare. The only other thing, and you've covered it with the town administrators, on the FinCom reserve, just a quick little synopsis. Dennis has 400,000 in their FinCom reserve, Brewster 100, Orleans 500, Yarmouth 100, Eastham 200, Chatham 100. I think you're asking for 100, so, we're actually on the low end, even at 100, but
well, we're asking for 125. It's been our
125,
recommendation.
so that's good.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that. I don't know how
Yeah,
everybody else feels.
so.
It's
So
certainly
anyways,
much.
Scott and I will, with the '24 figures, we'll kind of finalize this and give our next meeting a pretty good summary of where we're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, but see, the last couple of years, virtually no one's tapped the reserve fund. I mean, when the harbor master came and wanted an engine, I was like, whoa, this is kind of neat, someone actually wants this. So you can get lulled into thinking that 50 grand is a good number because nobody's asking for it. Well, here we just blew through 80% of it tonight, so. So it kind of goes like that. Okay, so we'll look forward to you reporting next month.
Yep.
Dan.
Hey, Peter?
One question for Mark.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I guess related. Just want to make sure that whatever you have is clear about what the components of those reserves are, so that we're comparing apples and apples when you have information.
Okay, that's a good point. It's a little bit of, some of these towns have stabilization funds, they have a capital investment.
Well, that's why I saw your earlier email. That's why I want to make sure that we're talking about the same things, and not.
I will check. I have a feeling what we have from the state is the gross of everything, but I'll confirm that.
Yeah, let's make
Thank
sure
you.
we're on
Yep.
firm footing when we
Yeah.
Yep.
put something forward. Okay.
Just along that line, the other two funds take town meeting action to get at them, whereas the reserve fund is the only one, like tonight, where you can do something in the same year that you're in.
It's totally up to
without
us.
going to town meeting. So having that percentage having that number as part of your full percentage works, but only if it's big enough to do the things that come before us.
Yeah. Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about the overall project for next month. The Department of Local Services has a pretty useful database of this information, which is a little bit behind the times. But what I looked at today was the stabilization funds, of which there were at least two categories listed. One are general purpose, one are special purpose. They don't list what the special purposes are, but I use the grand total as a percentage of the operating budget. The other thing that might be interesting is free cash as a percentage of the operating budget. For us, it seems like we always use it for capital, at least what I've seen in recent years. But we could do both of those different, both free cash and stabilization reserves, and we can split stabilization between general purpose and special purpose, just to give the whole picture.
You know, in the last couple of years, we've used stabilization funds because they've been fairly significant to conclude all our business financially at the end of town meeting, basically. So that the voters at town meeting are spending that money as opposed to going out and having to bond something like $10 million for this or that, which takes us, you know, a townwide election, which is a much higher hurdle to satisfy, I think, you know. So, you know, it's a catch-22 in that we've been using all those funds basically for covering our capital projects. And it's time to look at what it means to set some of this aside, so, okay? So
Yeah.
we'll look forward to your
Yes,
report
we'll work on it.
next month, right?
So, and Bob, if you can add in some stuff, we'll share it with you and
Okay, the
to
other...
get it all exact.
The other topic before I leave is you're going to bring back a list of routine articles to be voted on next month?
I will, and I'm gonna talk to Dana about that, so.
Okay, so we can do that, get that
If you're
started.
available, Dana?
Yeah.
But yeah, we do wanna get ahead of it. I'm new at writing the explanation, so I'm
Yeah, okay.
anxious to at least
That's
get my
fine.
feet wet so we can get going.
Okay, so the chair has to leave. I have to go to a Christmas concert over at the high school that one of my granddaughters is in, so
Understood completely.
well, I'm going to let you guys stay here. I want you to
Yeah.
walk through this.
Yeah.
All right, so Bob, what I'm leaving you with is the final action item, or final old business is the review of the revolving fund documentation,
Yep.
which is what this
Yep.
is. Okay, so you
Yep.
good?
Yep,
And then you can adjourn.
okay.
If he wants to, there's still other.
And you can bring this to me on Monday night.
Yep,
I remind you, on Monday night, we're at a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to look at the FY '24 end-of-year results.
And a copy that you needed
that's
there.
extra copies of stuff.
Okay, all right.
Does Michelle know about that? When she will get some of the-
Monday? Yes. Because actually what I told her was, she said, I can't get there at 6. I said, well, you can see what happened last week. People go to the mic, they have open discussion, blah, blah. So if you get it going by 6:30, you're kind of doing all right. So,
Yep,
although I plan to be there at 6 unless something happens. Scott, enjoy your vacation.
I'll see you on Monday on the screen, hopefully.
Okay. Are you going to be in banana country?
I don't know, I think that's more Honduras. This is Costa Rica. It's, I don't know
I'm
what
in
kind of
Costa
it-
Rica. They got you on the west coast or the east coast?
The South Coast, Pacific.
Oh, okay. No
Punta
comment.
Arenas.
All right. See you all later. Thanks for coming.
have a good time.
You're doing good work.
Enjoy the concert.
I will. I can't bring any
Granddaughter,
popcorn.
he's got to enjoy it. It's a law.
I have to. I have to.
Has to.
We've been before.
It's fun. All right, and don't forget to shut the system off.
We'll learn our lesson
We
on
good.
that.
All right.
All right, take it easy, Peter.
Okay. Review of the revolving fund document, which I'm gathering is...
Most of it I just set up as kind of an introduction and the history and stuff you've kind of seen before, details, and then what the actual laws read and so forth. And there was a part that Scott wanted added, which I added. different comments I got back from different meetings, even the ones I wasn't there at, I was able to incorporate those into the things.
So there have been changes since the last draft that we saw?
I think the last, my original draft, there has been changes since then. If you had a draft that had no charts in it, then that has only changed a little bit, and it's on the last page, which is why I'll go to the last page. It basically, throughout the document, kind of outlines that you can't just fix all the revolving funds in 1 year. The way that the finance works is that there's a lag year, right? You appropriate the budget, and then you collect the money during that year, with the funds coming in can't go immediately into those accounts. And the way it has to work is as you close out an account or reduce an account, then the money switches into the account. So for any item that we're gonna ask for a change on, and the first one is on 204 Sisson, you have to be able to put the money in first, up front, in the operating budget, and then as that money is collected, it then goes in, so that the next year you're on balance. And I kind of use a number based on the typical growth of the town and so forth, that we generally can add some money each year. And if you remember last year, we added the service one there, $250,000 to go for youth services for their program that they had. It was in an article before that, and then we put it in the budget. So that was $250,000 new dollars that came in that we spent. So I kind of look at it as, there's little over $1 million in the reserve funds, and it's not our intent to cut them all out completely. It's our intent to get certain things out of them, like operating the building would be put into the budget, as an example in Sisson Road. And, you're talking about $225,000 maybe total needing to do that. So that's right around that 200 to 250 range that I think each year we'll be able to safely put in. So in 4 or 5 years, we could have all of these cleaned up as how we want to do it. Now, the intent on what we're looking towards on Sisson is to put two things, put all of the building operation into the budget with an amount, and ask that the rents that they're charging, which is a very steady set of income that goes in, gets moved over to the budget as well. And then that would allow, yeah?
So I'm confused about this idea that it's going to cost us in year one, because isn't it the case that we would budget that revenue, that predictable revenue as well, and it would be a wash to the budget?
Generally, yes, but Harwich, for the last 35 years that I know of, has always been conservative on their receipts. They like to see a receipt come in and see what it is before they say, okay, now we're going to spend it. They very rarely, at least the financial people, very rarely like to go out on any kind of limit. All they want to see the money come in and know that it's there before they spend it. You could do that. If you've noticed, whenever the select board raises a fee or everything, they don't turn around and then say, well, that's going to make an extra 50,000, let's put 50,000 in, because they just never know. That's just not a practice in Harwich. It hasn't been. And it's not a practice in many, many towns. You want to see some revenue come in before you start saying, okay, we can safely put this much in for the next year. And the department,
it has been coming in.
right,
It's just
right,
becoming
and they
a
might,
different account.
they
So
might
maybe
feel
this
differently
is not-
about that, but either way, I'm trying to at least be prepared for that argument that we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
And so it would be us just putting in an increase in the budget, coming out of the general growth of the town anyways. I mean, the town has been growing a little over 4% financially each year, even though we're limited to 2.5%. We get new growth and we get other receipts and so forth, so we've been actually growing faster than 2.5%.
So your recommendation would be that we move a litany of expenses
Into the budget.
into the budget, and
Yes.
also that we indicate, not budget, but indicate that the revenue from the rent
We'll go into the general fund.
will go into the general fund,
Yeah, to help back this up.
correct?
And that would, you know, and we would then, in the article that sets the rates for all of the revolving accounts, we would reduce from 300,000, we would reduce that down to a much lower number and allow the director over there to still run programs.
Yep.
And still have that program money come into a revolving fund to be able to spend it according to the revolving rules.
And I think we've indicated that the number we were picking on was $20,000.
Yeah, it's some number like that, much lower than the 300,000. I think there's a question.
Does Massachusetts GML, does it allow for first instance appropriations?
Yeah, you can declare that if you want to, but you can see that,
That would be where money would be appropriated into an account, a first instance appropriation. And then as revenues came in, it would be credited to that account.
right. I'm just saying that's an aggressive area that this town so far has not gone into lightly. Even at the state level, they're very reticent to do that. On this new millionaire tax, they put in $1 billion, but it came in at $2.2 billion. I mean, they were very conservative on their estimate. You know, you'd have to take the rent number and say, well, probably half of it's going to cancel or something. You'd have to have some sort of protection for Department of Revenue to not.
In New York, first instance appropriations were utilized primarily in a capital construction budget.
Yeah,
It would create an account.
have some money go into it. Yeah.
Construction, and you get the bonds in or whatever.
I'm just preparing for the conservative approach that we
If
generally
it's
used.
not something that's recognized in
Yeah.
Massachusetts,
Yeah.
then you don't want to go there.
It is, but it's not used by
used.
towns
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
And the Department of Revenue frowns on it as well. They like to see,
They do.
good data before they
Uh-huh.
say, anything. So we do have a history of it. We do have a track record, and maybe that works. But I'm thinking the Finance Committee is going to be conservative as well and approach this with, let's make sure the money's there before
Yeah.
we.
Oh, yeah.
So
Go out-
approach it purely as an expense item
Right.
for this year's,
Right.
for this coming year's budget.
Yeah, and if you look at the detail of the account, a lot of building stuff went into those numbers there, and was paid through the revolving account, and phone services, heat, electric,
Yeah.
repairs,
Right.
all kinds of stuff went into there, and our other buildings have a budget, and they get it appropriated within a budget, and it's done that way, and this building does not. And, for many other things that were going on with that building, we used to hear the comment, well, we're treating it like every other building in town. And, well, now it's time to treat the budget like every other building, in my opinion. And then after that, we would meet, if this, Peter did say, the chair did say that he gave this to our liaison. He's probably looking at it and so forth. I would anticipate we would have the director in and the committee and talk about it with them and so forth and say what we're trying to do and not trying to do. We're not trying to shut down the revolving accounts. We're trying to make it more in line with what would typically come in and go out in a year rather than all the stuff that shouldn't be in there. And To me, that's a cost.
Liaison is Jeff Handler.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of this approach in a nutshell, and everything's there, and our suggestions are there, and then the fact that we would take on other accounts in future years is
So I think that
at the end.
I think the idea was, earlier, was that this would have been now the final version, and that Peter would then give to Jeff.
Yeah.
Do we need to vote it to do that?
You can, or you can, by consensus, say that, yeah, this is fine, or whatever. You
Okay.
want to make the following changes and whatever. But it's been gone over, as you know,
Yeah.
for the last several months.
Exactly.
And worked by myself, worked by Peter, worked by others, talking about it from the committee level, and those comments are all in here. And
Well, let's see if anybody wants to make a motion to to in fact approve this document for the chair's submission to our select board representative for his review.
I'm not going to make the motion because I
Right.
wrote the document.
No. Yeah, no, I think it would be good that we make a motion that it has the support of the Finance Committee. So I make a motion that the Finance Committee adopt this document for submission to the liaison for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'd be happy to second
Yes.
it. I only see the version dated November 6th that is the same, I assume, as what you're looking at, plus some charts at the end of it, so I would second it.
Yeah, I'll email that, depending on the vote, I'll email that to you tonight.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, we have a second, so we can have discussion on that,
Motion.
motion. Mark, you didn't want to make a second, so you,
No,
presumably you have
I
a
don't
comment.
have any objection to it. I just thought it would, instead of making it so formal, just pass it on as a consensus thing on it. Not to make it so formal, that's why I didn't second it. So.
But you
But I have
don't-
no
you
objection
have-
to this.
Okay.
I think we've worked on this for a while. I think it's very commonsensical. Quick question. The revenue doesn't, on the line item, I forget the budget, the revenue is not on that same line item, so you can offset it versus the expenses and see, almost like a P&L. The revenue is in a different section of the budget.
Revenue is not in the budget, it's in the revolving fund
Currently.
currently. So if you go back to that original revolving fund account that we got, it showed the revenue history, and I did put that as a chart in here, what the history has been. And they've used that to pay for their building
Right. I know in the
expenses
past,
rather than for taking a program, getting the revenue, and then moving on kind of deal.
Now it's gonna be a budget item, the expenses. Where do the revenues go?
Well, we're asking that the revenues from the room rentals
Right.
go into the general fund.
General fund, so it won't show on the actual expense budget, like as an offset, it'll go
Right, it will come into the general fund like anything else, and then at the next year, be able to be part of our base for going forward with receipts, that receipts number there.
Okay.
And that's the rent from the rooms, the regular room
The
rentals.
regular monthly rent roll,
Right, as
basically.
opposed to the program
Yeah.
fees generated, which would stay in the revolving
Right.
fund.
Right.
If they have pickleball, that's a program, they get money from that, that money would stay with them. If they decide to have a checkers tournament or whatever,
Right.
they use their building, they have a lot of arts things, they have a lot of cultural things, events, those bring in revenue. We're not, as a group, going after that, we're going after the rooms, rented rooms that involve a lot of different departments in the town, the collection of the money, the tracking of the money, the keeping of everything, all is done by other departments, and yet no revenue ever gets into the town that could be directed towards some of those departments. If, highway maintenance have to add a half a person to keep up with the building, there's no revenue for that. That would have to be a straight add-on. And this at least gets some revenue coming into the general fund, which pays for all that stuff. And it builds the town's base, and during a year like this, it gives the town more flexibility if something happens midway through the year to be able to move some stuff around. Right now, we're $1 million away from that, in my opinion.
So we can extrapolate, we can get the information and see what the revenue is versus the expenses, so we can make a determination how are we doing. I know it's not a profit and loss type of thing, but to see if there's a deficit of 200,000, we'll be able to get that information and make a judgment.
And with that information, the select board can then say, well, geez, our rents are right on, or our rents are way off, or our rents are over, or our rents are under, and they can react to that as well and say, they would set the policy that says, we want the entire building to be paid for or something, or they could say, we don't mind running it at a loss for the town because people pay taxes too. Whatever they set for a policy is a policy. We're just asking that the building gets budgeted and revenue, the cost of operating that building, which is mostly done through the renters, goes into the general fund, is our request.
So then the public will in fact have access, which they've never had before, access to the expenses, the operating expenses involved in operating that building.
Right.
And they'll have access to the revenue that it brings in as well.
Right.
Right.
That's what we want.
We're pretty sure that it's not a surplus of any kind, but
Oh, no, no. But
at
anyway,
least,
to move things along, if you want to take a vote, I would say aye. I just thought it'd just be easy, just as consensus, pass it on. Whatever you decide, I'm all in on it, so.
As a vote of confidence to the work that Dana has done, I would vote aye.
Okay, so, and so you're staying with your motion, to have the motion, to not change it to simply, not change what we're doing to simply a sense of the group. You're staying with having a motion. Okay, and Scott, you're not changing your second, right?
Oh, aye.
Okay, so let's have a vote on it then. A vote on the motion. Mark?
Aye.
Aye. Scott? Aye.
Aye.
Dana? Aye. And the vice chair is an aye. Okay, 5-0.
5-0. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other business that we need to discuss tonight?
Just real quickly, the second part of your little thing that I handed out was the documents that basically Michelle was going to tell us under item C. There's been some discussions over that, and informally, we went to Duncan, Michelle and I and Bob, and we talked about these documents, and just our real goal is to make sure that the Finance Committee has good information when it makes its decisions. We also felt that it's a good way to track the information coming from the town administrator's office. I've been doing this for over 30 years, these documents, and I kind of have them in a format that's a little bit easier sometimes to see and understand. I can, because it's just us, I can add some color from time to time to make it look like it's a little bit easier to read. I put the date on each one, so you always know which document we're talking about. If you've got the latest one, I put my name on it to make it just clear that it's my name. But the three of us have committed to basically work. I'll be the control, but I'll send it to Michelle and Bob early before we have our next meeting each time and say, these are the changes, here's the updates. Do you see any problem? Because he's found mistakes of mine. Anybody can make a mistake, and anybody can find a mistake. As you saw in the Monday night meeting, I found an error that was in the formula for the administrators, or for that document. I don't know who does it, and I don't care. It's not that. It's just to make sure that when it's, a difference of $100,000, that we know why it's different by $100,000. And as Bob found it as well. And when you find something like that, you check your math 50 times over just to make sure you haven't done something wrong. And then you finally say, okay, well, it's not me. So this document here, the one that's on top, is the first document, and it's your one-liners on the warrant. And later, we'll know the totals, we'll know all the numbers, there won't be all these zeros. Later, we'll know what we have available, and that will be on here as well. And then at the bottom, there'll be a balance as to what we can spend and what we haven't spent and what we have left to go and so forth. And it's just a quick, easy way to look at the entire warrant with a cheat sheet of, it doesn't read all the articles or anything, it just gives you the title and says. Now, on this particular document, the ones in yellow, the selectmen have already approved, so those ones are in the warrant. So we could actually start meeting with the libraries on that one. We could meet with the Promote the Town, the Chamber. We could meet with Mass Cultural. We could take a position on the herring fishery. And then the first three are the choose town officers, reports, and officers, and elected official salary. We don't have any salary numbers in there, so we can't take a position on that yet. But as soon as things are populated, we can go through and start working on them. The rest of the list that is all in like a tan color, that was just put into the packet Monday night from the town administrator to the selectmen. And so I put those on the list. Those are going to be articles in the warrant, presuming that the selectmen put in. And it's real easy to take one out. The problem we've had for the last few years is we don't get this information until the end, and they're trying to put stuff in all the time. So it's much better to have it all up front and then take them out if something's just not ready for town meetings. So they're working in that direction this year. It's a much better way to go. It should make our job easier, and I hope we get on some of these sooner rather than later. The second document is just what he gave out, the town administrator, but this is just, again, with a little bit of color that tells you that if it's in blue, it was added by the Finance Committee last May at the town meeting. If it's in yellow, it's a new item. If it's in green, it's an increase in the price of an existing item. And if it's in that tan color, or orange, or whatever you want to call that, it's a decrease in the price that was there last year. And it just makes it a little bit easier to see. And if you can see under FY 29 all the way down to the bottom, or FY 30, I mean, all the way down to the bottom, that there's a $100,000 difference, and I noted that one number is from the town administrator, one number is from me. He's has since told me he's going to fix his number. So
This is the capital outlay budget right here.
yes, yeah. So that's the second document. Yeah.
Then the first sheet, that obviously I don't have it, but you mentioned at the beginning that this is a way to let us know how much we have left to spend. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, we're going to get
The
a.
operating budget?
Yeah, this thing has the request in one column, but then it has how we pay for it. It's either free cash, it's paid for by receipts, it's paid for by taxes, or it's paid for by other. Later, we'll have amounts that correspond. We'll have the free cash number, we'll have the receipts number, we'll know what our taxes are going to be. Taxes are usually spent on the operating budget and the schools.
Yeah.
So we'll have all of
Well, that's
those numbers, and as we deplete them, we'll know what we have a balance.
So that's the fiscal 26 operating budget.
Yes, this is all 26, yeah.
Yeah. crucial to that will be the assumptions for receipts, correct?
Yes, yeah,
Along with tax revenue, obviously.
right.
My observation has been that the free cash that's generated every year, like the 5 million more or less supposedly generated in fiscal '24, is really coming from the fact that revenues are so conservatively budgeted.
Well, there are
And
six places it can come from, but yeah, that's one of the big
Yeah,
ones.
but the biggest is the revenues being under budgeted. I know expenses sometimes are over budgeted a little bit. That's part of it for us
Right.
in '24, I believe. And that is, in turn, I think something that's actually recommended by the state. I heard this at the conference that we went to, that it suggested to us that we budget only like 80 to 85% of the prior year's actual revenues.
Right.
So it's just interesting to me that it's kind of a natural recurring source of free cash, unless something bad happens and the revenues really do go down.
Right.
That's where the free cash comes from most years.
Yeah, you have the rainy spring where people don't get to play golf or go out on their boats as much, and things like that happen. We had the tornado, which messed us up one time. So there are things that happen that can affect the numbers, and sometimes it's covered by insurance, but a lot of times that takes so long that it's into the next year kind of stuff, and
So once town administration starts producing that information, we can incorporate it.
yeah, that's.
Right.
And then the last one is actually 3 pages, and that's the town operating budget. And you can see one blank column, which is FY '26. And I usually try to go a couple of years of actuals, and then a couple of years of budget, and then the new budget. And I have a column in there that says pluses and minuses. Right now, they're all minuses, because we haven't had anything yet. And the only number I've put in there is the 125 for the reserve fund. That's
And
increased.
the one thing that I had recommended and continue to recommend relative to this, this spreadsheet, even if it's another version, simply a different version of the same spreadsheet, is, I think not, and I think you've mentioned this before, Scott, is to have a version that allows us to compare with last year's actuals.
Yeah. Which we're about to get, right?
Well, we'll see what we get on Monday.
Yeah, that's the
We
thing.
don't know.
We don't know.
We do not know at this time what we're getting, if anything, as actual documents on Monday.
Okay, so it's just going to be on the spot, maybe. All right.
I mean, the information exists, we don't know if we're going to get it.
But we're gonna ask for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I do have one question, and I don't know the answer to it, maybe you guys can talk about it. I thought it was very interesting, the Gulf had a $2.5 million capital outlay for irrigation. And they're gonna pay for it out of a fund that they have. In other words, the town will bond it, but the Gulf will pay for that expense through the funds that it has. And the harbor has really quite large capital expenses coming up. The bulkhead, perhaps, that may not actually come to fruition, Allen Harbor. And my question was, for such a large capital expense, why hasn't there been, or has there ever been any consideration of creating that same type of fund that the golf department has for the harbor, so that they take out that revenue? So that's why I want to bring it up. You have the history, go ahead.
That really gets back to how much money do you want in your operating budget and how much money do you want outside of it. And the more you put outside of it, the less you have in your regular budget to be able to do things. For example, the entire water budget used to be all part of the town's general budget. And I know that years ago, we were accused of using water receipts to pay for other stuff in the budget. But I went back through the 6 years that I was a selectman, because I have the most detail on those numbers. And we were ahead every single year on what we spent on water versus what they took in. Other years after I left, that didn't happen. So that but you're right. We took all that money out, so now it's not in the general fund. So we can't even do that anymore. We can't say, well, we're gonna be a little light on them this year because we have, this whole thing fell down with the Albro House or something. You could take the golf receipts and put that into a private enterprise fund. You could take the ambulance receipts, they've asked for that every year, to have the special receipt for that, and towns do that, and that pays for all the ambulances. But it also takes all that revenue out of the general fund. And right now, we're cruising at, what, 18 million or so in receipts, or whatever the number is. You know, you take $5, $6, $7 million out of that, and now you're doing a lot less with that. And, you know, we found in the water department, and the two departments used to mirror each other. The highway department and the water department were the only two departments with a lot of trucks and a lot of maintenance and those kind of things. And over the course of 5 years, and this was given to me by a previous town accountant, the water department had better trucks overall and better equipment and better, so they were upgrading things faster and quicker than they were under the old regime, under the old way of doing things. They were taking the enterprise money and putting it into that stuff. And that is a good thing in many ways and a bad thing in other ways, but it just meant that there was a difference. And if you do that difference across the board on every account we have, and put a lot of money into revolving accounts and a lot of money into enterprise accounts and things like that, your general fund does not have the money it needs to do that. And then you're limiting stuff based on that. The other thing that goes on with that is the personnel, full-time positions, are not in any of the revolving funds. So when they need, because they're adding all these programs on, when they need a new program specialist as a full-timer, that's coming out of the budget. That's coming out, and you're gonna have to start curtailing things like that if everything were to switch. So you're right, we could do all of those things. We could say, you know, we're to protect the town against all the water projects that come up at the harbors and so forth. We're gonna take all their money and put it in this fund and make them pay for it, you know. But it doesn't always work, and there's sometimes expenses higher than what they bring in for revenue, and then they're going to the town again anyways, you know.
You're not creating any extra money, you're just moving money around.
Right.
You're right, you're right.
Yes.
But like, there's gonna be rate increases coming through. I think Harbor Master said this is the last year of 4 years that they have a 2% annual increase, but, you know, next year they should be, you know, their fees should.
If I could,
Go ahead.
if I could follow up on what Mark brought up, I think you're right, you're not creating any new money, but you're shining the light by looking at that contrast between how golf can somehow pay for the debt service on their $2.5 million project, but the harbor projects are going to be right on the general operating budget. It's just the economic fact that golf is a more profitable operation than the harbors. The harbors serve, I guess, a more general purpose for the town, because all they have for directly attributable revenue that I know of is the slip fees for dockage, right? Maybe there's other miscellaneous revenue that they earn, but it's just an area of the town's budget that doesn't have a lot of revenue. Golf is different. I think if we looked at their revenue accounts, we would see that they actually make money in the general fund.
Well,
somebody mentioned that at one of our meetings.
That actually hasn't been done in a long time, but it has been looked at. There was an accusation at town meeting one time that golf was making too much money, and a complete study was done, and it found that golf was not making what it spends, what it costs. If you take the entire cost, the cost of the structures that they have and the capital in order to repair greens and this and that and the other thing, they weren't making it. And at one point, all of their revenue, when that study was done, was coming into the general fund. They didn't have this little extra account. They didn't have a revolving account. Even the pro shop, all the money came into the general fund. and they had to predict what they were going to sell in the next year, and I remember the finance, this is before I was on the finance committee, but I remember them arguing over the golf asked for pencils with erasers instead of those little pencils without the erasers. They were like, it's more money, and the finance committee was arguing about it and going on, and they didn't approve it. And
This topic does come up on a recurring basis. It's not a new topic
Right. By
about
law,
having enterprise funds or not having enterprise funds.
Massachusetts general law says that you cannot, a fund cannot make money for the town. You can use 10% of the overage for administrative costs and fees and things like that. But, you know, if we went on the basis of departments, the only department we should keep is the treasurer's office, because they spend about $200,000 and they bring in over 40 million. That's the one we want to keep and just get rid of all the others, you know? But it doesn't work that way, so.
And if you allocated all of the indirect costs back to the revenue-producing cost centers, nobody's making money.
Nobody's making money. It's the town is not here to make money. The town is here to provide services, and hopefully strike that balance between the proper services versus what you pay for real estate taxes, basically.
No, I agree that the most important criteria for setting rates, whether it be greens fees or the cost of a boat dockage, is to compare it to our neighbors and to make sure that it's not out of line, it's not overly expensive, but it shouldn't be overly cheap either, that depriving the town of that revenue. I'm sure that sort of a review has also been done periodically.
Yeah. Okay.
Should be.
Anything else that needs to come up?
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks for your work, Dana.
A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Whatever.
Positive? Vote?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Night, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Enjoy your time.
See you.